Hi, Roy here, and welcome to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garden, and we have got so much to talk about. This has been a really busy news week from the White House administration and Donald Trump. So having said that, let's go ahead and get into it. The first piece of news that we need to talk about, of course, is the big, beautiful bill that has passed. I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive and get into it so you can see some of the things that maybe you're not aware of. But first, let's talk about AOC, because she pretty much summed it up, the way things are happening. And so she basically warned of an Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, explosion, and ensuring barbarism at the hands of the big, beautiful bill will continue passing the House. And of course, ICE refused, the people who handle ICE refused to comment. The White House refused comment. A lot of media tried to talk to them about how much of the billions of dollars that are going to be going to ICE, and none of them had anything to say. So you can expect that, of course, from the folks there in the White House. So anyway, they had record-breaking debates over the legislation, and a lot of Republicans withheld at the last minute to try to show their constituents and the people that elected them that they really have a heart and care. But, of course, at the end, they all fell in line and kissed Trump's golden ring, as you expected them to do. But this bill is going to have a nationwide impact on millions and millions of Americans. And Trump campaigned on the fact that he was going to do a mass deportations, and we can expect that as well, that would happen. But now that he's into his second term, he's just going to make things work and make sure that Project 2025 continues. So he appointed Tom Homan as his border czar to help carry out these initiatives, as we're all well aware of, along with Kristi Newman. And the passage of the big, beautiful bill marks a significant milestone for Trump's administration and sets the stage for a continuous new chapter in immigration policy. And AOC had some concerns with that bill, and she went on record as saying so. But what this means for funding for ICE is I don't think anybody's going to be prepared for what they just did with passing that bill. This is not a simple budget bill increase, as a lot of people are trying to think, well, that's all it is, just a simple budget bill increase. It is an explosion making ICE bigger than the FBI, the United States Bureau of Prisons, DEA, and others combined. It is setting up to make what's happening now look like a child's play, AOC said. And people are disappearing as we all know, they're loading them up and disappearing. And she's grieving over the barbarism that's going to unfurl from all of this. And, of course, the Democrats can't really do a heck of a lot about anything because they don't have the numbers in the House or in the Senate. Hopefully during midterms that will change and there will be more checks and balances. Right now there are no checks and balances. And on top of a conservative Supreme Court, Trump is basically now an authoritarian president. He can do whatever he wants without anybody telling him anything different. And he loves that. And he likes the spotlight. And that's just Trump's personality, as we all know. Livelihoods are gone, AOC went on to say. And it's all just to feed a corrupt administration, so she says. And, there's no guardrails, as I just mentioned. She mentioned that. And so, but here is the key thing I wanted you to bring out that AOC, said, and nobody really realizes this. In the bill, $45 billion with a B dollars will be given to ICE for detention capacity, while allocating another $29.9 billion in additional funding for the agency through September 30th, 2029. And you get a lot of these Republicans when they're questioned about that. Well, I can't read all the bill. I don't have time. We have to get this through. I didn't see that. That's not true, but it's in there, folks. And AOC is very good at seeing things and detailing things. The funding for ICE now exceeds that of many of the world's military. So you really need to understand that. And as I go on and talk about this bill, this is basically going to be my top story today, is kind of breaking down what's in this bill and what is not in this bill. So, as you all have been basically made aware of, this bill is cutting Medicaid, and it's cutting the SNAP benefits, and it's going to be affecting not only people in this United States. What you need to understand is the Veterans Administration, for all you vets out there that like to wave the American flag and wear your MAGA hats, you are going to be losing the benefits from the Veterans Administration. So this bill, and I'm going to try to keep it short as possible, but I do want you all to understand, is that it's completely eliminated any kind of funding for Planned Parenthood, which is kind of funny because last week I did the Right Has Left podcast about a woman here in the state of Florida who is a Republican that had a tubal ligation procedure done, and not a doctor in the state of Florida would help her because they're scared to death because of these new federal provisions and state provisions by the state of Florida in place. She even made a personal phone call to Ron DeSantis, who didn't pick up, and she was scared. And finally, a doctor went ahead and did the procedure for her out of fear of him losing his license. So anyway, if you're on Medicaid and you're not wealthy like Kate was and these other people, you're not going to have any help at all. It completely eliminates any kind of funding to help anybody in health clinics who are on Medicaid. They can't even get help with pap smears. They can't get any help with breast cancer checking. Nothing with this new bill. So they can't get any kind of Planned Parenthood, and they put all these other provisions in it that have nothing to do with sexual procedures, but that's what they're going to do. So you women out there, it's got to be really tough. So the other thing that I want to cover here, because there is a little bit of transparency here, I like to rag on certain things, but I also want to make it very clear about some of the things, because Trump can say this. I didn't touch Medicaid. He didn't touch Medicaid for seniors over the age of 65. That is true. If you're over 65, pretty much everything that for you has been left intact. But if you're under 65, they still feel that you can work. And this is the whole key about all of this with food stamps and with Medicaid. If you're 65 and younger, you should still be able to get out there and contribute to our nation's economy and do some kind of work. So that has, that's the basic thing about that. So keep that in mind, folks. Medicaid is they're completely reworking it to where if you're under 65, it's going to be really tough for you to have any kind of Medicaid benefits unless you're totally disabled and you can't get up out of your chair and work. And that goes with the food stamps too. You got to be able to get out there and do a little something. And if you can't work, maybe you can do some community service. What they want you to do is 80 hours of some kind of work or community service to be able to get food stamps. So that's something that you need to be aware of. And speaking of food stamps, let's take a look at Lisa here. Yeah, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. She did a little backroom deal to where the state of Alaska would be exempt from all of this stuff because they were having a hard time getting all the necessary votes from the Republicans from the Senate to get this bill through. So they cut her little deal and kind of put some wording in there like, well, the lower 48 states are going to have to take care of all this. But if you're not in the lower 48 states, north, blah, 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 they're exempt from all of this. So, yeah, Lisa, thank you very much. She took care of her state, but the hell with everybody else. As long as you take care of me, I'll do this little backroom deal. And you can get my vote. So yeah, that's what Lisa did. Now, another thing that went on with this bill that maybe is not being talked about a lot is student loans. Now, folks, a lot of the folks out there, including myself, had federal student loans and Pell Grants. And the Biden administration tried to help out the folks with certain programs like the SAVE program and things like that. And that's all going bye-bye. Yes, it is. So, it's kind of sad that that has to be done. But the Trump administration thinks everybody's getting a free ride, and he doesn't like that. So you're only going to have two types of payment plans. And now what's scary about these two types of payment plans with the student loans is the fact of the matter is if you are not working, you lost your job, things like that, well, you're going to have two opportunities to restructure your loan to maybe help you out. But after that, you are responsible for paying back that student loan, hell or high water. And if you don't have a job, you better get out and find something. Work at McDonald's, work at Wendy's, work at Walmart, do something, because you are going to be responsible for paying back that loan. And they can either, if you go in default, they can even take anything from like your future Social Security payments, anything to make sure that you're paying it back. So you're going to have two types of options to repay your loan back: a standard plan and the repayment assistance plan. That are going to be your two options. Right now there's four, but those are all going away. And you're not going to be able to defer due to unemployment or economic hardships, like I just mentioned, but it would be also give you the ability to rehabilitate those loans two times, and then that's it. Now, as for Pell Grants, excluding those who receive full rights to a university and adding individuals who enroll in a workplace training program, the Pell Grants are going to be totally restructured as well. He says, Trump says, I want to preserve the American dream for working in middle-class America, but, you got to do your part, too. So, now, one thing that you need to understand, I'm going to give you some figures here as I scroll down here. A lot of folks don't have that kind of money to repay $400 a month. See, Trump thinks that people who get a college education are automatically knocking down $100,000 more or a year with their degree, and you've got money to pay back that loan. And that, unfortunately, is just not true. So that's what you got to really think about is the money is not always there. So a typical person, let's say, as I find the information here, where'd it go? Anyway, so I can just go off the cuff here. Let's say that your student loan is you borrowed $70,000. But you're in a job right now that you're only making $45,000 a year. With Trump's plan, they want you to have at least a minimum of 10% repay back value. Well, let's say you got to pay back $450 a month on that student loan. That doesn't leave you much for anything else, like a car payment, utilities, food, if you got like a family of four. But he doesn't care. So, you pay back that loan. For wealthy people, that's nothing. But for the average American out there who, is not getting a very high-paid job, especially a young college graduate right out, they're basically getting a $15 to maybe a $20 an hour job as they start off. And your student loan becomes due as soon as you graduate. You get like a 6-month window, and then you got to start paying that sucker back. And that's hard on them. But see, they don't understand that stuff. They sit there in their little rooms and stuff and, pat each other back, give them the attaboys, and it's you're done. Same thing goes with these food stamps. Senators and congressmen and congresswomen, they get a $69 a day allowance for food, for lunches and stuff to entertain their little friends. If you're on SNAP, your allowances comes down to about $7.50 for that meal. Again, people who are in Congress, they get lifetime in medical benefits and health insurance once they've been there a couple of years. And most of them, do get reelected. They're covered on top of their monstrous salaries that they give themselves raise every year. They take care of themselves. They have the entitlement, and then they justify all that. We're out there working for the American people, yet the American people are getting crapped on. So I don't see how that's really benefiting anybody. But he says it is. All right, let's move on. So we talked about the big, beautiful bill and some of the stuff in there. What I want to move on to next here is Alligator Alcatraz here in Florida. That's also been in the news. Now, they just had a presser with very friendly media come down there and do a great, wonderful tour of Alligator Alcatraz. And as you see this video that's rolling on top of me there, yes, it was a big deal. There was women there in high heels and beautiful skirts walking around in a nice air-conditioned building as they had a tour guide give them a tour of Alligator Alcatraz. There was a lot of set dressing there as well. There was eye charts up there, like we're going to have doctors here and make sure these immigrants are all taken care of, and doctors are going to be available for them, and so that's a good thing, right? Right. But the sad thing about it is they're all laughing and patting each other on the back, and as I said, Florida is going to be getting another one of these up by Jacksonville very soon. In fact, they've already, started breaking ground for it. Now, what's interesting here is I want you to listen to a quick quote by our illustrious governor as he talks about how this outfit was built with very little investment from Florida, and that is true. Why was it built with just a little investment from Florida? It's fact of the matter is that $45 million from FEMA was pulled out to pay for this thing. And there are FEMA trailers there, and they're not for the immigrants, they're for the guards. Nice air-conditioned FEMA trailers. $45 million was pulled from FEMA. True, DeSantis gave the grounds to build this encampment, but FEMA is really the one that paid for it. And of course, they still say there'll be money for hurricanes and stuff if that happens, but we'll have to wait and see about that when it actually hits and see what Florida actually gets back in FEMA assistance. The other thing that DeSantis talked about is that he bragged about Brightline, which is a railroad service here that is privately funded, and not any money came out from the feds to pay for that.
And provide. So my sense is he's probably not going to bite on that, but I don't know that they'd be able to come in at cost because they tried to do this high-speed rail. They spent like $150 billion, no tracks. We've got a privately funded rail in Florida from Miami to Orlando, cost the taxpayer $0, and it's very successful. So just a much different approach between states.
That is also not true. The section in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that comes up through Florida and up to Orlando International Airport, FDOT money or federal money was actually used. $35 million worth of money was actually used to pay for that. So Brightline themselves no longer says, there was no, this is a totally 100% privatized railroad system. It's not, and they say so. So again, DeSantis is wrong there as well. So, sorry to say about that, Ron, but that you got to understand that. Also in the news today is this gentleman right here, Zohar Madawi. Trump was criticizing him and saying that, this guy is a communist and he needs to maybe be deported. Listen to this.
What do you think about Zohar Madawi having such a hard time condemning the phrase globalized intifada?
I think he's terrible. He's a communist. The last thing we need is a communist. I said there will never be socialism in the United States. Now we have a communist. So I think he's bad news. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with him, watching him, because he has to come right to this building to get his money. And don't worry, he's not going to run away with anything. I think he's, frankly, I've heard he's a total nut job. I think the people of New York are crazy. If they go this route, I think they're crazy. We will have a communist for the first time, really, a pure, true communist. He wants to operate the grocery stores, the department stores. What about the people that are there? I think it's crazy.
Of course, Zohar wasn't going to sit there and take all of that. He had a great rebuttal, and here's that clip.
Yesterday, Donald Trump said that I should be arrested. He said that I should be deported. He said that I should be denaturalized. And he said those things about me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history. Less so because of who I am, because of where I come from, because of how I look or how I speak, and more so because he wants to distract from what I fight for. I fight for working people. I fight for the very people that have been priced out of this city, and I fight for the same people that he said he was fighting for. This is the same president who ran on a campaign of cheaper groceries, who ran on a campaign about easing a suffocating cost of living crisis. And ultimately, it is easier for him to fan the flames of division than to acknowledge the ways in which he has betrayed those working class Americans, not just in this city, but across this country, and the ways in which he continues to betray them. Because we know that he would rather speak about me than speak about the legislation that he is shepherding through Washington, D.C. Legislation that will quite literally take health care away from Americans, legislation that will steal food from the hungry, legislation that looks to build upon one of the largest transfers of wealth we've seen in recent history in his first administration, and do it once again for the very Americans who already have enough. We should be fighting for those that do not have what they need to live a dignified life. That is what I will do, and I am thankful to have the protection and to have the support of so many New Yorkers who have stood up and said how unacceptable this is, including our governor, including members of the labor movement. And ultimately, what I fear for is that if this is what Donald Trump and his administration feel comfortable about saying about the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City, imagine what they feel comfortable saying and doing about immigrants whose names they don't even know.
So as you can see, Trump likes to rag on people that have, in his words, funny last names. A communist, he's a Muslim, so he needs to be deported. Zohar is just like AOC and Bernie. He's a progressive, a Democrat, and he believes in helping the people, as he just said in that clip. So, Trump needs to back off a little bit and said, I'm just going to, not give any money to the state of New York. We'll just take him off as a part of the United States of America. We're going to have people like him running the state. Folks, you can see the prejudice that is starting to come out here as he gets more and more power. And it's scary. This country is founded on no matter what you are, what your religion is. Not everybody's a crook or criminal and out to get the U.S. just because they maybe look different, but, so it goes. Let's move on to other news, and that is, of course, the settlement with CBS. Now, Paramount has agreed to pay $16 million to settle a lawsuit in which President Donald Trump alleged that an interview with Kamala Harris and his Democratic opponent for the presidency at that time that aired on CBS at 60 Minutes last year was deceptively edited. The agreement in principle proposed by a mediator includes plaintiffs' fees and costs, and except for fees and costs, will be allocated to Trump's future presidential library. So Paramount Global said in a statement last week. Now, as I said, they are the parent company of CBS. So, he originally sued them for $20 billion with a B dollars in damages, and of course they settled on the $16 million, and he's happy about that. And it will now allow Paramount to move ahead with their merger with Skydance, which is a company they're trying to absorb, and because of streaming capabilities of the two, and of course they had to have FCC approval, and to get all of that, this thing had to be settled and out of the way so they could proceed with the merger. And so now it looks like they're going to be able to do that. Again, Trump not liking anybody that does anything against him. He wants to have all media give himself in a positive light. And so there you go. Hopefully that will happen. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about here is going back to this Alcatraz, because this was late breaking news. They're sending 200 Marines down to the state of Florida, not knowing where they're going to go. That just broke here yesterday, or not yesterday, July 4th, but the day before. And those 200 Marines, we don't know where they're going to be. Again, we all know that Marines don't have arrest powers, and they actually said that. But from, the Carolinas, they're sending down these Marines to the state of Florida to assist ICE, again, with, as they say, executive and administrative help to take care of more immigrants that are going to be rounded up. When and where that's going to happen, we do not know. But it's, again, like they did in the state of California. Pete Hegseth is allowing our U.S. military to get involved with ICE to help round up everybody. So that's kind of sad that that's going to happen. But so it goes. We have our military now involved with things that are going on with the ICE roundup, and it's I don't know. Another thing, and lastly, that's going on in our beautiful state of Florida today is the Pulse Memorial. The Federal Transportation Department, FDOT, again run by Republicans. You see that beautiful rainbow sidewalk there? Well, the federal department with roads and transportation now says that that's not good. We need to have those rainbow stripes removed. They need to be in conformity with all federal standards on highway markings, because that can be a distraction to drivers and we're going to have accidents. So they want that possibly removed. The good news about that is, if there is any good news, is Ron DeSantis has already gave an okay and funding for this Pulse Memorial, because many people died in that mass shooting from, as you know, decades ago, and they finally got a memorial put together. And he approved that. But, if the feds are going to come in and say, we want those rainbow colors taken out of there, and it should just be, white like all the other markings for crosswalks, because this is a distraction, it isn't. And everybody in Orlando says it's not a distraction. Even Republicans are saying it's not a distraction. It is a memorial, for God's sakes, which helps, remind people of what happened there, where minority groups like the LGBTQ community are shot at and killed. But so hopefully there'll be some common sense there, and that'll be left alone. But we can't have that happening. And lastly, in news, which this is a national thing, but it did affect things here in Florida. In fact, it affected me personally, because my granddaughter was involved in going to an after-school project. She's in preschool, and she's going on in kindergarten. She's a very bright little girl, and she was getting, she was selected among about only 20 other kids to get into this special after-school project for summer school as she goes into kindergarten. Well, without notice, just a simple email, the Department of Education said, you know what, we're cutting all funding for this. So school districts will be forced to cancel after-school programming, and they did. She still had a week and a half left, and last week was her last day without any notice or something. Said, we're sorry, this program's gone. Enjoy the rest of your summer. So it was a $6.2 billion federal K-12 grant project that the U.S. Department of Education had, and it was approved by Congress. You need to understand this. This was approved by Congress. And because of executive action by Trump, they were told, cut that. Let's funnel that money over to ICE. We could probably put that in there too. So they call it wasteful spending. So the funding that was already approved by Congress is now gone. So some of those programs, including migrant education, that's why they cut it. There was some migrant education there as well for helping them to learn English and stuff. We don't need to do that because we're getting those folks all out of here. But they don't understand that also affected other millions and millions of children. Boys and Girls Club that a lot of kids belong to. And besides these special programs, and this help paid the teachers to put on those programs, it is all gone. So, we don't know when it's going to come back too. And Individuals with Disabilities Education Act for students with disabilities. That's not going to be happening either. So it's just, and they really didn't have any reasoning for it. They just said that it was wasteful spending, and we got to figure out what else to do with that money. So anywhere they can put money into getting ice, that's what they're going to do. So I just really, it's really sad about all this, how this is all going on. But there you go. Funding for that's cut. Medicaid's cut. SNAP is cut. The Federal Highway Division is complaining about rainbow stripes on certain sidewalks. And the AOC said it very, very clear. All of this money is being cut so they can funnel it to more money for deportation. That's really what it's all about. Anyway, that's your episode of The Right Has Left. I am Roy Garden. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, you try to have a good week. Take care.